Welcome to the Deep Dive. We often tackle stories here that they don't seem to want to go away quietly.
That's true. Some mysteries just stick around.
Exactly. Even when there are official answers, official conclusions, some narratives just keep haunting us, right? They stay right there at the edge of our minds.
Absolutely.
And today, we are definitely getting into one of those stories, maybe the biggest one in recent memory, Jeffrey Epstein.
A huge one. Still resonates.
It really does. And just recently, July 2025, the Justice Department finally put out its big final report, the one everyone was waiting for.
Yeah, the definitive word, supposedly.
Right, and that word is no secret blackmail list, no, shadowy assassins, and his death. Officially, definitively, a suicide. Case closed.
That's the official line.
But, and this is the huge but, isn't it? For so many people listening, that's just not the end of the story. The questions are still there, maybe louder than ever. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's exactly that feeling, that persistent doubt, that makes this such a crucial deep dive for us today. Because this really isn't just about Jeffrey Epstein, the man. It's bigger. It touches on, power, huge amounts of it, secrets.
So many secrets.
And this really deep distrust in the official story that just keeps sparking debates all over the world.
Yeah.
So today we're going to try and, peel back some of those layers, look at the known facts, sure, but also dig into why, even with this final statement from the DOJ, so many people just aren't buying it.
It makes you look underneath, doesn't it, at what might be really going on behind the official pronouncement.
Exactly. What structures allow these kinds of stories to even exist, let alone persist?
Okay, so let's start at the beginning then, because Epstein's rise itself is, it's pretty baffling. Sets the stage for all the skepticism, maybe.
It really does.
He starts out, seemingly ordinary background, born in Brooklyn, 1953. No old money, no Ivy League pedigree.
Right. Smart guy, apparently, but still.
But he drops out of college. And this is the first big how. How does a college dropout suddenly land a teaching job at Dalton? This super elite Manhattan prep school, full of the kids of the wealthiest people.
It defies easy logic, doesn't it? And that's sort of the Epstein pattern right from the start. What's really striking, even back then, is this uncanny knack he had for connecting with powerful people, leveraging those connections.
But it wasn't just luck, you're saying.
Doesn't seem like it. It feels more strategic. Using that teaching job where he's meeting these wealthy families as a springboard.
Okay.
And then somehow he makes this leap to Wall Street. And it's completely opaque how that happens. By the 80s, he's suddenly claiming to manage fortunes for billionaires.
Claiming being the operative word.
Well, yeah, because this is the absolute core mystery, isn't it? Where did his own vast wealth actually come from? How did he get so rich so fast?
And it's not just a curiosity. That wealth bought access, influence.
Exactly. It created this kind of shadow power base. And honestly, despite all the investigations, everything that's happened since, that basic question still pretty much unanswered.
Which just fuels the next chapter, right?
Yeah.
Because once he has this, let's call it mysterious wealth,
Yeah,
his connections just explode. It becomes almost mythical.
it really does. The names are just staggering.
We're talking presidents, future presidents, royalty, tech titans, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, Prince Andrew, Bill Gates. The list goes on.
And he wasn't just, shaking their hands at party.
No. He's flying them on his private jet, the Lolita Express, as it became known. Hosting them at his mansions, New York, Paris, Palm Beach.
And, of course, the island, Little St. James.
Pedophile Island. The nickname itself is chilling. The sheer scale of it all, it feels like something out of a movie, but darker.
And that's the really disturbing context for the alleged crimes, isn't it? The scale, the connections, they weren't just incidental. They seem central to how he operated.
How so?
Well, the allegations involve drawing in incredibly young girls, some just 14, using these false promises, modeling, education, just easy money, exploiting vulnerability in a really calculated way.
Right.
And once they were in his world, his orbit escape was reportedly very, very difficult. He seems to have built this system not just for exploitation, but for control, for silence.
Like, wasn't just random acts?
No, by many accounts, it was sophisticated, an operation. And those powerful connections, they provided cover, maybe legitimacy, and crucially, a network for the alleged trafficking. They weren't just window dressing.
It's almost impossible to wrap your head around how it went on for so long. But eventually, the law did start to catch up, or seemed to. 2005, Palm Beach police start investigating.
Right, the first major probe into the abuse allegations.
And from everything we know, the evidence was strong. You had dozens of victims bravely coming forward, police work pointing directly at him.
Mountains of evidence was the phrase used. It looked like, finally, maybe justice was coming.
But it just didn't happen, did it? What went wrong? Or maybe what went right for Epstein?
Well, went wrong is putting it mildly. What happened in 2008 is it's one of the most stunning failures of the justice system you can point to. All that evidence, all those victims. And he gets this deal, this sweetheart deal, doesn't even quite capture it. It was a non-prosecution agreement on federal charges, basically a shield.
So no serious federal time.
Worse.
Okay.
He pleads to lesser state charges, gets just 13 months in a county jail. And even then, he gets work release, allowed out 6 days a week. It was barely even jail time.
How does that happen with those kinds of allegations?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Who protected him? Why did a potential life sentence just evaporate into, like you said, a slap on the wrist?
The obvious suspicion involves those connections.
Exactly. The widespread belief then and now is that his powerful friends and maybe the secrets he held about them played a direct role. It wasn't just a legal anomaly. It felt like the system bending under pressure, a profound failure.
And for the next 10 years, it really seemed like he was untouchable.
He was back out there, moving in the same circles, seemingly no consequences. Like that deal bought him a decade of immunity.
Until 2019, when things changed dramatically. Largely thanks to one journalist, right? Julie K. Brown.
Absolutely. Her reporting for the Miami Herald was relentless. She brought the victims' stories back into the light, published court documents. She basically forced the issue back onto the national stage, reignited the whole thing.
And that led directly to his rearrest.
Yes, a really dramatic arrest at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey. It was huge news everywhere. And this time the charges were federal, and they were explicit, running an international sex trafficking ring, targeting the rich and powerful.
And the search of his mansion.
Mm-hmm.
That added another layer of intrigue.
Oh, definitely. Reports of piles of cash, diamonds, and crucially, these alleged blackmail tapes.
The infamous tapes, if they exist.
Right. If they existed, they suggest a motive, don't they? A reason for powerful people to maybe want him protected or later silenced. This wasn't just reopening an old case. It felt like a massive escalation. The stakes suddenly seemed incredibly high for everyone in his orbit.
And then, just as things seemed to be heading toward a trial, towards maybe getting some real answers, the unthinkable happened. August 10th, 2019.
The news breaks. Jeffrey Epstein found dead in his cell, Manhattan's Metropolitan Correctional Center.
Official cause of death comes quickly. Suicide by hanging.
Almost too quickly for some, because almost immediately the circumstances just screamed irregularity.
Yeah, it seemed too convenient, didn't it, for a lot of people, given who he was and what he potentially knew.
Exactly, and the details that came out, they just fueled that fire. 2 guards supposed to be checking on him every 30 minutes reportedly fell asleep for hours.
For hours, on that specific night.
Yep, and then allegedly falsified the logs to cover it up. His cellmate had been transferred out just before, and the cameras.
Cameras weren't working properly.
Right. Reports said cameras covering the area outside his cell malfunctioned, or the footage was unusable. It was just a perfect storm of failures all at once for this incredibly high-profile, high-risk inmate.
Who had previously been on suicide watch.
Correct. So the public reaction was instant. That phrase, Epstein didn't kill himself, it wasn't just a joke. It became this global shorthand for deep state conspiracy, for cover-up, for profound distrust.
It tapped into something already simmering.
Totally. It forced the question, was it really suicide? Or was it, a silencing? Who benefited most from him not being able to testify? The questions just piled up.
And central to this whole ugly story, you absolutely have to talk about Ghislaine Maxwell.
His right hand, essentially, described consistently as his closest confidant, his girlfriend for a time, and crucially, his alleged primary recruiter.
The one who allegedly brought many of the victims into his circle.
That was the core allegation against her. Her arrest in 2020, found hiding out in New Hampshire, was another huge moment. It felt like maybe, through her, some more truth would come out.
And she was convicted in 2021 for grooming and trafficking minors for Epstein. Justice served, in a way.
In a way, she was held accountable for her direct actions, yes. But for many people watching, her trial felt incomplete.
How so?
It didn't really blow the lid off the network, The focus stayed pretty tightly on her crimes, not necessarily on the powerful men she allegedly connected with Epstein's victims. Who visited the island? What exactly did they do?
those questions lingered.
They really did. Her conviction closed her chapter, legally speaking, but it didn't feel like it illuminated that whole shadowy world Epstein operated in. It left this void, like we still only had part of the picture.
Which brings us right back to July 2025. The DOJ and FBI released their final, comprehensive report. This was meant to be the definitive answer, right? To put all the speculation to rest.
That was clearly the intention, provide closure, and their findings were very direct.
What were the key takeaways?
Okay, so no evidence of some secret comprehensive client list beyond names already out there in court docs. No proof found of those infamous blackmail tapes or any hidden dossiers.
Okay.
And critically, they doubled down. Epstein's death was officially a suicide. They mentioned reviewing enhanced CCTV footage that showed no one entering his cell area for 11 hours beforehand, trying to counter those earlier camera malfunction stories.
So addressing the conspiracy theories head on.
Trying to, yes. But the reaction, predictably explosive.
Yeah.
You had people like Elon Musk publicly saying it eroded trust. You had the conspiracy forums lighting up with cries of cover-up.
So it didn't really achieve that closure, did it?
Not universally, no. For the federal agents involved, their stance is clear. The investigation is over, the case is closed. That's the official reality. But for a huge chunk of the public, it seems to have just solidified their existing doubts.
So where does that leave us? Where does that leave you listening to all this? The official story is set, the files are closed, but those core questions, they're still hanging in the air, aren't they?
They absolutely are. And that's the real legacy here, I think. Regardless of official reports, the fundamental mysteries persist.
Like, how did he really make all that money in the first place? That initial seed of wealth is still murky.
Still murky. And why? Why did the most powerful people on the planet gravitate towards him? Was it just charm? Or something more transactional, more sinister?
And the biggest one, maybe. What secrets died with him in that cell? Secrets that might have implicated others, rocked foundations.
Exactly. These aren't just trivial loose ends. They point to these deeper anxieties we have about power, accountability, transparency, especially at the very highest levels.
Will we ever know?
Maybe not. Maybe the full story is buried forever. Or maybe one day, some forgotten piece of evidence, a hidden witness, something finally surfaces and gives us the real story behind the man who seemed to know far too much.
It's a lot to take in. So after hearing this whole twisted journey, the improbable rise, the shocking deal, the arrest, the death, the final report, what do you think? Where do you land? Was Epstein's death suicide, plain and simple? Or does the lingering possibility of a silencing operation, a way to protect powerful figures, still hold weight for you?
It's a tough question.
It really is. And it forces us to think about how we process information, who we trust, especially when official narratives clash so strongly with public intuition and, frankly, with some very strange circumstances.
Indeed. Because if there's one thing this whole saga reminds us, it's that in these worlds, these intersecting circles of immense power and tightly guarded secrets, well, things are almost never as simple as they appear on the surface.
There's always another layer.
Always. The official story might be written, but the conversation, that feels far from over.